Hello and welcome to the Echo Chamber podcast. My name is Tony Groves and today we're auditioning for our 8-minute slot in the Laughter Lounge. And Martin, I think you're going to win, buddy.
No, I don't think so.
As always, I'm joined by my co-host and the winner of the Oscar for Best Mindless Zombie, Martin McMahon.
Thanks very much, Tony. It's nice to be back in the chamber again. It's been cold out there in your boot.
It's a big boot and there's heated seats, you cheeky bastard. More importantly, we're delighted to be joined in the Tortoise Shack by stand-up comedian, self-confessed mad yoke. Mad yoke, I haven't heard that since I was 3 or 4 months ago. Anyway, the latest. But and crazy dog lady Linda Hayden. Linda, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. And I know you travelled a long way to get here. You actually one of these people who live outside of Dublin.
Outside of Dublin, I know, yeah. Celtic Tiger house prices brought me out there, and negative equity keeps me there.
I actually didn't know you were Culture.
Yeah, well, I'm a Dulce.
Where are you?
I'm a Newbridge, County Kildare.
Oh, that's well.
It's well more culty than yours,
yeah,
but I don't think that we're allowed to say culty anymore, so I'm going to stop now.
Oh, why is that now politically incorrect?
Yeah.
What do you say, sons of the soil?
There's silly. But I just want to shout, I married a Cork woman, so leave me alone.
You have immunity.
Play that dispensation, yeah. No, I'm
going to get my car pelted with eggs on the way home.
No, thanks very much for coming on. I'm delighted to have you here, and it's great to have a bit of laugh, but also it's the week that's in it now. I suppose you'd be remiss to not start about the storm that we've all come out of on our own little stories. I know you lived one online now, which was quite a Twitter escapade of
These things are only funny because they're actually true, but
and they involve drink.
Yeah, well, we managed to escape the house on Friday night, which was great. We got to the pub. We stayed in the pub far too long, and then when we got home, the key broke in the door. So we decided to try and knock the neighbours up, who we don't know.
You mean knock on the door?
Yeah, no, not knock them up.
Somebody's already
done that to one or two of them. No, that's not my job. We were trying to wake them up at 3:30 in the morning so that we could climb over their fence with permission, because, you know, it's always better to get permission when you're climbing over somebody's fence, but they wouldn't wake up. So we just climbed over the fence anyway, completely forgetting that we were going to leave footprints. So the next morning, dying in the bed, heard the door knocking. My sister was supposed to be coming to bring a key so that we could actually get out of the house. And it was the neighbour who was standing there saying, "Oh my God, are you guys okay? Somebody came through our garden into your garden yesterday." And I had to go, "Yeah, no, that was me."
Yeah, and I am actually the owner. I'm not just squatting like.
No. They know that I was there before them.
It's the Chris Rock moment. Remember he said when he got, "I'll never call in the police to my house. They'll show up, hit me over the head and go, 'We got him.'"
Absolutely. But trying to explain to him what had happened while looking like death. And I was trying to use sign language as well because I couldn't actually speak. I was so hungover. So yeah, the storm was not good to me.
Well, at least there was no JCB tracks in the snow.
I could have been worse. I could have knocked his fence down.
It was a struggle for you as well, Martin. You bloody foolishly went out in your little hairdryer of a car and
I got punctured. Well, look, the snow was mainly over. I had a slow puncture and it was make or break, get air into it or else get it fixed. So trying to get air into it just got worse. And that was it. I had to leave it at the garage and walk home. And then the next day go back.
Shame.
No, that's a lie. He actually rang me and he said, "I've got a puncture. It's freezing. It's freezing. Like my hands are sore." And I had to come.
You liar. Well, it could have been worse. I did eat the neighbour on the other side.
Heated seats.
This is it.
That's what you exactly want when your hands are too cold.
Well, it wasn't the hands. I was terribly worried.
I said to God.
Speaking of fingers, you guys promised me chocolate fingers.
That's true, and
there are no chocolate fingers. Don't come on this podcast. There are no chocolate fingers.
There's nothing.
Blame him. if we were having it in my gaff, there'd be bottles of beer, there'd be everything.
Yeah.
And the after party go on till 4 o'clock in the morning.
You'd be knocking your neighbours up.
Climbing over walls again.
Absolutely.
No, look, it was, but I suppose that just goes to show that the actual was just the whole country came to a halt. And when you really think about it in the grand scheme of things, no wonder the Canadians wandering down Bratton Street, seeing everything closed, thought, what the fuck is wrong with you people?
Oh, yeah, no, but I had a story about this. Going back to 82, and then I know we had 2010, but it wasn't the same kind of snowfall. It was a different thing. Heavy snows like that we get once every 30, 40 years. So rather than spend money getting prepared for it, it'd be much, much cheaper. Just have a little fund, stick a few bob in every year, half of what you'd spend on getting the equipment together, and then fly everybody off to the Canaries.
Absolutely. I totally am on board with that. Totally agree. I'm just going to go out and sacrifice a couple of virgins so that we get the same snow again next week.
I kind of have that. But the truth of it is actually that the actual truth, the economic truth is that it's apparently something like, say, to cover Dublin would be over 120 million a year to be snow ready in the event that we don't have and then we don't have the snow event. And people say we've just spent 120 million that we didn't use, and we have it every 10 years, so you have to spend £1 billion.
Yeah,
now,
and then it doesn't give anybody a chance to stand in front of cameras and talk about how great they're doing.
Well, that was his job, but it wasn't his job to stage it as much as he did. The minister for rolling up his sleeves was very good at rolling up his sleeves. You know, we had all of that nonsense, and a lot of that was panto. And
well, flanked by a copper and a soldier. I mean, that's just.
But no, the best was Evelyn Cusack in the background, giving him daggers. This is what she's done every day of her whole career, and here's this little Brian O'Driscoll sounding young flip coming in and doing her job for her.
He has to mansplain it for the country.
Not good enough to come from Evelyn and the girls. Oh no.
No, I thought there was no doubt, and it all goes into this huge context, and he's actually started to kick back. You notice the last 24 hours saying people keep accusing me that I'm just all about spin. It's like, Leo, saying that isn't going to help your cause, mate. It's not. People are just going to jump on it.
He was in the Dáil this evening, and he was having a pretty good crack at the opposition for, he's telling this narrative that it's nothing to do with him, and it's just, this is policy and this makes sense and blah, blah. And you're centralising 180 million in the Taoiseach's office. Of course, it's power. Of course,
180 million, and we won't buy Verstatus patches for people with chronic pain.
Yeah, well,
I know it's only one equivalence, but there's just so many things that are wrong with that concept. You can build a 3-bedroom house for €161,000, and he wants to put 180 million into. Look, they're saying communications. And he keeps saying communications is a virtue, and I keep saying it's not. It's purely just a means of transfer.
You see, they'll fight you on the Verstatus, and they'll tell you we had a report, blah, 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 blah. But what they can't fight you on is scoliosis. And those children were made promises that they would have their surgeries by now. And I made this comment last night, and a woman straight away got on. And then the scoliosis network got on straight away and said, yes, that is the case. So I can't marry one with the other, and I can't see how Fine Gael voters can say, yeah, it's okay, let's spend 5 million on this, let's centralise 180 million. What kids?
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm a member of the Social Democrats as well, and Sláinte Care is one of the big initiatives that we're doing at the minute. This could have been introduced a long time ago. And I know it's going to cost money to put in, but absolutely it's the right thing to do for the country. Why are they dragging their heels on it?
Well, it's a huge emergency at the moment. You've over 600 people every day this week on trolleys. So you're actually in, if something serious happens, and it doesn't have to be that serious, a novavirus outbreak is enough, and then your hospitals are over capacity, then you're shutting down A&Es. The lists are so long that the problem is self-perpetuating. The lists, people get chronic on the lists, they present in A&E, and it's this vicious circle. So all your time is spent dealing with the backlog of having lists. So as far as I'm concerned, if you were in business, what you would do is you would spend what you need to spend to fix the backlog, and then you'll run smoothly after that. The problem was, and it's the same with homelessness, they said 100 people on waiting lists wasn't a problem. They said 5,000 people on waiting lists wasn't a problem. And now we're at 700,000 people on waiting lists. And now it is a problem. But they're doing exactly the same promises.
There was a nice part where they broke it down, and someone said that the emergency committee met 3 days in a row. And have they ever met for the homelessness crisis? Yeah. Have they ever met for the trolley crisis? And like, not saying that we're not, again, making, before I'm accused of false equivalences, it does matter. Because if you really wanted to grab the right people, they've been in this room. There's Larkin Sir, there's Mel Reynolds, there's people who you can bring in and you can actually sit down, and if you brought them in 3 days in a row, Orla Hegarty and these great people, you bring them in and you formulate an actual plan as opposed to a photo op where you're having another housing summit, because we're months away from our next housing summit,
weeks. Man.
We're on the countdown to it,
In the meanwhile, there's still 120,000 people waiting on houses.
And the situation, actually, the situation is getting worse at a faster rate than it did in any time in the last 18 months.
Yeah.
And that's not coming out. Those figures get squashed by the Department of Housing all the time.
I think it was Peter McVeigh Trust was saying today that the cold weather showed that there are far more people homeless than are counted as homeless.
Absolutely.
And that this cold spell meant that they were able to go and find those people that aren't usually counted in anything.
Richard Chambers put it out. He said, I know then, having seen what Leo had said, that there were 12 people who slept rough. And Anthony Flynn said he had counted over 52.
Yeah.
Now that's a huge difference, folks, and you can't have that.
There's 4 people sleeping rough in the streets of Newbridge on Saturday night. Most definitely.
Yeah. Again, this is where we are, and then we want to spend 180 million on
feel good factor. And I mean, what it is, they're advertising themselves. They're saying, "Hey, look, we're doing all this over here. This glam, look, photo ops." Simon McGarr said it to us. There's 2 buttons on every minister's desk: the red button and the green button. The stop, the go. The green button gives you lots of press coverage. The red button doesn't. So what you're going to do? You're going to they're like monkeys.
Yeah.
There's your peanut. Hit the green button. Gone. And they don't need integrity. You don't need anything. Just hit the green button. Any chicken head could do it. Honest to God.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know, and then I'm going to take this in a different direction now, and I'm going to because we've spoken about this before you came on, so it's a difficult topic, and it's really difficult for me to bring up. But I know when we were talking online, we were mentioning the Belfast trial of Paddy Jackson and Stuart Olding and that poor young woman. And what struck me was, I remember when one of the girls who was asked to go in and give evidence, and she was asked why didn't she think that they were taught that they would report something like that? And she said, would you, if you had seen what's happening here in the last few days?
Absolutely. So, as a rape survivor myself, it's something that I've been particularly aware of over the last few weeks. And it's something that, there are other rape survivors out there on Twitter who frequently talk about, their experiences and stuff like that, as I do, because there is this stigma around rape. There is this real stigma around people reporting. People won't report because of things like the Paddy Jackson trial, because of things like the things that have meant that we've had to have things like the MeToo movement this year, because of the stigma. People are in power, and you just have this fear that people won't believe you. And one thing that I kind of really wanted to get across when we were discussing me coming onto the podcast was, about how we can take this stigma away. And it's a terrible thing that happens to people. There are different things that you can do, and there are different things that people say when they hear that you've gone through that. Well, why didn't you report them? Exactly why, the amount of people out there that are saying how brave that girl is. And she is 21 years of age, and she's having her whole life laid out. It seems like she's on trial, not them.
Oh, no. I nearly slipped earlier when I was introducing it, because I nearly referred to the young lady who was on trial. And I had to literally caught it there before I said it.
So, and like I've done lots of different kind of talking groups and stuff like that with this around people that I know. For example, we've got the amazing Polly Molotov on Twitter. And she actually, she often talks about her own experience, but she was brave enough to report and twice had a mistrial. And the second time was because the consultant had moved to Canada and wouldn't come back to give evidence. So, she was brave enough to go and talk about what had happened to her. She got her elbow broken and everything in her attack and got absolutely no justice for it. And the 2016 Dublin Rape Crisis Centre figures, they said that 286 people had, let me double check.
Okay.
293 people had accessed their services in the year of 2016. Of those 293, 84 cases reported to the Gardaí. Okay, so that's 293 people went and sought some sort of a counsel for having been attacked. Of those, only 84 people went to the Gardaí. Okay, so there's straight away a problem. Okay, yeah. Why are only 84 people out of nearly 300 people?
Well, I think the answer is kind of obvious.
Absolutely, it's obvious. There is a stigma attached to it and an absolute belief that people will not believe you, that there is some element of shame on you. What were you doing?
You were asking for it.
Absolutely.
And I think when we discussed this as well, I think the statistic was you were more likely to get pregnant. Absolutely.
So of those 293 people who accessed the services, of the 84 people who went to the police, what they ended up with was there were 11 cases went to trial. And of those 11 cases, only one was prosecuted. One was actually convicted. Okay? So you have 1 out of 84 or 1 out of 293 if you want to look at it like that. Also of those 293 people, 11 individuals presented as being pregnant as a direct result of their rape. So statistically in this country, you are much more likely to get pregnant from a rape than you are to get any kind of justice. So that's wrong. We need to look at that.
And you're going to get, and we saw this. I know you're good friends of Ruthie Fitz, and did you see her conversation with a typical due process nut job?
Yeah.
Because we get this smart due process. Everybody's entitled to due process, and
innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, and but it's so weighted because what the idiot who says that doesn't understand that the courts have been built by men to facilitate men for the last number of hundreds of years. We live in a patriarchal society, whether we want it or not, and that's just the reality. So we need to accept that that's where we are, and not have this absolute bollocksology of due process. Because the simple fact is, it's statistically, it must be the easiest crime in the world to get away with.
Absolutely.
Well, there's some people who do sterling work in the area, like you've Nolan Blackwell. And I mean, why these people aren't involved in reforming the process, why they're not asked to be involved in reforming the process. These are the people with the hands-on knowledge. Nolan worked in the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre as well. And there are plenty of people with huge knowledge out there that aren't men. There just are. And they're probably the right people to reform the system so that it's user-friendly. And why does the system have to be any other way but user-friendly?
Absolutely. One thing I would say is rape is not specifically to women, obviously. Anybody, be them man, woman, trans, anything, anyone can be a victim of it. It is very much, and obviously with the Eighth Amendment, the whole system is actually weighted against a female victim, because of the fact that if you do get pregnant from the abhorrent crime that happened to you, you have to travel to sort that out, or else you face longer jail time than your attacker.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
and you face jail time for going as well.
Absolutely. So, there is an awful lot that we can do. I know myself, actually what kind of made me start to talk about my attack, I said nothing for 14 years. Absolutely nothing for 14 years, because of the fact that there was this element of shame, but there was this huge thing of, well, sure, I must have done something, because this is what society tells you all the time. What did you do? Did you drink too much? What were you wearing? They took that girl's underwear and they handed them around to people. The stuff she was wearing on the worst night of her life, and they handed it around the courtroom for everyone to have a look at. That sickened me more than anything else.
There's nobody on that jury qualified to tell you what's what they're looking on at. Or not on that underwear. There's nobody qualified on the jury. So there isn't actually a physical need to produce. You can read the reports, you can say what was there, but is there an action? No, it's all for value. And it is
never going to happen that those guys, because those guys don't have to take the stand, so it's never going to happen that their underwear is going to get passed around.
But do you not think there's an onus there on the legal profession? It's that, do I need to do this?
Yes, Martin, because they're going to say, I'm defending my...
absolutely. They're there to do a job, you know?
You're saying, you're talking about onus, like the onus on them is to win.
Yeah.
The onus on them is to win. That's their... maybe the word is morality. Is there an ethical problem? But you're talking, you're opening this up. Look, where this whole thing is totally abhorrent is where you end up with people coming out, reporting rape, going through this entire ordeal, which is not saying it's worse than the actual ordeal, but I tell you one thing.
It's just as bad, because I can tell you as a victim, I have been exceptionally triggered by a lot of the stuff that's going on. And I know an awful lot of the other people that I know who've been through this are exactly the same. And we're all looking out for each other, because I have a friend who's a comedian, and she was raped by a promoter. Okay. And I've had to keep checking on her, and she keeps checking on me, because this is, it's exceptionally triggering, because, we're thinking about what were we wearing? What happened to the clothes that we were wearing when we were attacked? And there's neither of us, and no woman or man or anybody out there ever goes out thinking, if I wear this, I might get raped. Because you do know there is no place in the world that you're going to want to do that. And as I said, it's so traumatic. It took me 14 years to actually turn around and say, this is what happened to me. I actually went to an STD clinic and got treated for STDs that resulted from my rape, and didn't say anything to the medical professionals that were there, because I was so traumatized. So for people to say everyone's entitled to due process and all of that, that's bullshit. Because basically what you're saying is you don't believe her. And she is putting herself out there after suffering the worst kind of an atrocity that she could possibly suffer. And you're saying you don't believe her. And to me, people who say that are the kind of people who keep this in the shadows. They keep victims like us keep our mouths shut. And people just need to turn around and think, okay, that's fine. Everyone's entitled to due process. But do not go and start saying that on public forums and stuff like that, because what's going to happen is you are keeping more closed mouths, and you are letting more rapists get away with what they're doing. Because as you said, probably one of the easiest crimes to get away with. And if you keep treating people who are victims as if they actually did something to deserve it, then, nobody walks down the street and gets robbed and gets asked what they were wearing when they were robbed.
No.
So it should be exactly the same.
MeToo has enabled a lot of people to speak up about what has happened to them, and a lot of them knowing that there'll never be a conviction. All they're doing is exactly what you did after 14 years. They feel empowered to talk, and MeToo has given them a focal point to talk under. How do you feel about it? How it's happening, particularly in Ireland?
I absolutely love it. I love it in that, like that, part of the MeToo was, I did my own MeToo, and I had 5 women contact me directly in private messages saying, oh my God, this happened to me, and I don't know how to cope with it. I've never actually told anybody. So it really does, if it doesn't empower you to kind of point the finger, you can say what has happened to you in a safe forum, and people have a real kind of an understanding now that things need to change. So I absolutely believe that. The only thing that worries me with MeToo and Time's Up and things like that is if it doesn't last, if it's just a little flash in the pan. So, a few people have gone, this person did that to me. And, take, for example, say the Irish comedy scene. So we had our own version of MeToo there a couple of months ago, where several different people made allegations against different people. And initially there was this huge backlash, and people were taken out of positions and taken off the air, or,
stood down and
taken out of places where they were given power. And it just seemed like things were changing, and that was fantastic. But now, a couple of months down the line, it's looking like, because there is no conviction for that, that it's lost its momentum, and now these people are starting to come back in.
Well, it's weathering the storm.
Absolutely. So it's it is brilliant, but we've got to keep it going. We've got to keep it going, and we've got to keep the pressure on, because people need to understand that this is not acceptable.
Here's a kickback, and it drives me mad. And I wrote this, and I took dogs abuse on a broadsheet as usual. That I said it's not actually a movement. I said because if it was, 5 people losing their jobs is not changing the world. A few men being uncomfortable for a little while is not changing the world. And as you said, Martin, then weathering the storm, and to make matters worse, having the backlash, which was inevitable, but the backlash then, because then they framed the conversation with, very quickly, has MeToo gone too far?
Yeah.
And they framed it like that. And when you frame something in that way, you're not even, it's this Fox News Fair and Balanced. Let's have a guy on from Israel and a guy on from Palestine, and then we'll have a guy in the middle who's the arbitrator, and he'll turn to the guy in Palestine and he'll say, "You like to kill children, debate." That's not a debate, folks. And if you start off with, has it gone too far? A, you don't understand at all. And B, you're just weighed in on the side. You've said already, it has. If you have to ask the question, you believe it has. So anybody who's asked that question, shame on you. Because all you've done there is thrown your lot in with people who've done the most abhorrent things, taken abuse of power, and actually, I think it's very brave to come in and say these things here today, and I'm delighted that you did. But my blood is boiling now. So
yeah, I mean, the thing about it is, I stayed quiet for too long, way too long. And what actually pushed me to start talking about it was I saw Niamh Horan did an interview, an article in the Indo in around 2014, and it was basically like, it was a well-meaning piece, but it was women who get raped normally have 7 to 8 drinks on board when they get raped. So the tone of it was, girls, don't drink too much, you have to mind yourselves, right? And in the same paper on the same day, a guy had been convicted of rape, and he'd been given a 6-year sentence with all but 1 year suspended because he was from a good family and he'd had a few drinks. Now, to me, that was it. That was enough. I was not staying quiet anymore. I wrote a whole blog piece about it, just about how it is not anything to do with victim blaming. You should absolutely be able to do whatever you want within legal reason, and do it without fear of molestation. And that is not the case. And if you go and you speak to your wife, go speak to your mother, go speak to anybody, and they will tell you there is always an element of checking yourself. Where what am I wearing? Where am I going? Do I have to carry my keys in a certain way? And you are constantly, and it doesn't matter if it happens to you once, you're still having to be that on all the time, and it's exhausting. It is absolutely exhausting. It needs to stop. And how it will stop is we need to start talking about consent at a much younger age. We need to really put pressure on the Minister for Education to get consent classes into primary school. It's got to start at primary school.
Well, I know, I talked to my brother in Australia, and I know here with our sex ed, we are so far behind the curve. We're so far. His 2 little ones, twins, in our equivalent of primary school. And they invite the parents in first, and they give the parents the talk. And my brother told me, because there's a kind of Irish community there, he said the Irish people, adults, were mortified.
Yeah.
Mortified.
We need to stop. We need to stop having this shame around sex, but we need to absolutely start talking to our children at a much, much younger age. This thing of, kiss your auntie, kiss your uncle. If the child doesn't want to, that's a consent issue. You have to accept that. And, this is where we need to start checking ourselves. your child does not want to interact with people in a kissy, huggy way. You can't force them.
And that's a basic of communication. You know?
Absolutely.
It's a very basic.
But it's worse because then you walk in and you go, I'm sure boys will be boys. And
Absolutely, yeah. Or, oh, he's only pulling your hair.
Yeah.
You know, he's physically assaulting you because he likes you. What message is that given to young girls and to young boys and to everybody?
Everything. I've said it the other day. I said Captain Caveman when I saw something happening in the schoolyard down the road, and I thought, remember Captain Caveman? Yeah. And the whole joke was he'd knock her out with the club and drag her off by the hair. And all I thought to myself was like, oh my God, okay, we don't have that on the telly anymore, but we have it in the schoolyard.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely. And I think the younger we start consent classes. So when I did get angry, you know, after 14 years and started talking about it, and started shouting about it, you know, I wrote to the Minister for Justice, asking for certain judges who are very lenient on rapists to be impeached, because I believe we need a full judicial review. I think we are far, far too lenient. You know, this bullshit of he was from a good family, he'd had a few drinks. Absolutely not.
Anthony Lyons, and is 22 houses over there, and he's, you know, Anthony Lyons, and Anthony Lyons was because he had money, because he had influence, and because he said, I took a cough mixture and I had and Sudafed, and
he got to pay the poor box, and he was the last one to do it though.
But now, and I know it was cracked down, and he had to go. They came back, and then he
jailed him eventually.
They jailed him eventually. But Anthony Lyons, my blood boils just even saying the man's name. But that just for me stood it out. You know, the guy at the time, if you remember, Begley got 8 years for garlic, and it was literally within 6 months. Begley got 8 months for garlic, and Anthony Lyons got nothing for sexual assault.
And the thing about it wasn't it 10 grand he had to pay his victim? And she said she didn't want it. She wanted him to go to jail. She wanted him to go to jail, and eventually he did. But that's the kind of thing. And like, say, for example, let's talk about the case in Kerry, where the judge allowed the whole town to traipse past the victim after her attacker was convicted and to shake hands. That is absolutely why we need a judicial review on this. So I wrote to the Minister for Justice looking for certain judges to be impeached. Never heard back. And then I wrote to the Minister for Education looking for consent classes for a much younger age.
And you need to, like, take in Simon McGarr again. It's like this. We might as well just give the show and say, Simon, you come in and host it, please. But, please do, actually, Simon. Martin's looking for an out. But like he talks about then, if you can't get to the minister, try and get it introduced as a parliamentary question. You know, these type of things. Yeah. And because we got to get better at how we attack the actual problem.
We do.
And that's the other thing we can do as individuals. We can look and see what can we do to change it. And if you're going to try and get something out of a government that can just ignore you, well, then go to the opposition and see if you can get it introduced on the floor, you know?
Yeah.
I agree with you. And I've done a lot of that. I've done a huge amount of that, a massive amount. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, but it's down to each individual person. And if we move as a whole body to the point where, you know, that's where the MeToo movement came from. And, you know, a bunch of women just bought the Weinstein Corporation.
Yeah. Well, I also think that King's Inn now, I think the gender balance is more female than male. So I think in that too, when you have that hasn't yet filtered through to the judge level as much as it has at the barrister level. But when it does, you're going to see a different attitude, and there is already a different attitude. It's palpable in there in the courts at the moment, very much so.
Martin's in court most of the time.
Yeah.
That's a lovely suit you're wearing.
He's got a lot of. What's a North Sider in a suit?
What the defendant, please.
But yeah, no, there's definitely an appetite for change, and you know, I've done my own straw polls with people. I was in a bunch of 5 women, and of the 5 women that were there, every single one of us had been raped. Okay, this is how bad it is. Every single one of us had been raped. One had reported and had no justice from it. I ran a Twitter poll a while ago to ask, you know, had people been in some way, be it verbally sexually assaulted, physically sexually assaulted, or raped. And, you know, they say 1 in 5 women are going to experience this. It was 7 to 5 yes to no.
I'd well believe that, like, because like we two lads sitting here talking to you, and we just think, and you go, well, that was banter. Who got the set where banter was? Who got the draw where the line was?
I don't know. No. I'm going to disagree with you there. I know. I mean, people say this to me. My friends don't tell me rape jokes. My friends don't tell me rape jokes.
No. What I mean,
it's a bit like the racism and the homophobia.
Yes.
It's not acceptable anymore to make jokes about things like that.
It hasn't been for a very long time.
But that's still not to say that if you're in a nightclub and your friends had a few drinks and he's grabbing some young one's arse, that you're going to go over and tell him that's not acceptable.
That's what I was pointing
not
at, Martin.
acceptable.
Not the same thing as cracking the wise about it. I mean, you're looking at the sort of stuff that you see.
Pressure. It's got to be from peer pressure. And that's why we need consent classes younger, because the kids need to realise that's not acceptable what he's just done. And you know, the girls that they're doing it to, they know it's not acceptable, because look at the reaction that you normally get, digging the head, usually. But then, you know, who in your peer group is going to turn around and say, that wasn't banter, that was actual assault, and you need to stop that.
But it's the conservatism in the education system that's you know, when I heard about what they were telling the kids out, and I said, these little kids, and I wouldn't blush easy, but I blushed at that, what they were telling them. But they were right to be telling them. If we had that same thing when I was a kid, we'd be better informed. But you know, difficult, even the way it is here, and it's very much birds and the bees over here. It's still, a lot of people don't want anymore. Yeah.
And there's that embarrassment, the mortification. Oh my God, the mortification of it. You know, we need to stop that.
Yeah.
We need to stop that. We need to start, if we take that away from sex, if we take that mortification away from sex, then you take shame away from rape survivors and rape victims. And that's what we need to do. That's what we have a duty of care to do. We need to go out and tell anybody who's been a victim of this heinous crime, it was not your fault. It was never your fault. And what can we do to help you?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a really
Well, it's a good start. What can we do to help you? It's the place you start.
Yeah. So, just need more of that.
It's going to be International Women's Day on Thursday.
It's Thursday,
and that's the day when all the men in the world can go, Men's Day.
International Men's Day is the 9th of November, lads. You do get your own day too, and you should be celebrated. Just one day.
Isn't it Eva Martin wakes up every morning and tweets the same thing?
Absolutely.
Happy International Men's Day.
Eva is my hero.
I always see the same tweet, and not always, but quite often quote tweeted the same thing. Finally!
No worry. There's quite a bit organised for International Women's Day this year. If you are pro-choice, I would urge everyone to go to the March for Repeal. 5:30, the Gardens of Remembrance in Dublin City. I know that an awful lot of the repeal groups around the country have their own marches and their own things going on. I'm a member of South Kildare for Repeal, and we're going to be outside the Whitewater Shopping Centre in Newbridge on Thursday evening. It is the biggest shopping centre outside of Dublin, I'll have you know.
That's not Dundrum.
No.
That's outside of real Dublin.
How do you lads not get your houses eggs together? Gee, don't know.
Because they only know where he lives.
The snow angel's gone in the front yard. I get away with it now.
I'm sorry, it's like, this doesn't look like the house that you were naked
outside.
I wasn't naked.
We do try and incorporate Southsiders in, and we've had a few Southsiders in here.
I'm a townie, so I'm just going to rob all your shit on the way.
Yeah. That's why she brought the big bag.
There's nothing in it. It's got a false panel.
What are you doing yourself anyway? You're busy at the moment. I saw you at the recent gig for
Ruthie Phoenix.
Yeah,
so we had a couple of weeks ago, we had Stand Up for Ruthie. In case anyone doesn't know, Ruthie Phoenix is a very good friend of mine. She was in a very serious car accident back in November and has an acquired brain injury now. So we've been doing quite a bit of fundraising. It was an amazing night. We managed to raise quite a bit of money for her and her family for the medical bills, and her 4-year-old daughter was in the car with her as well when it happened. So we're having play therapy for Ava as well at the minute. So hugely successful night. Thank you to all the Twitterati who came. It was lovely to meet everybody and put real faces instead of avatars to names.
Yeah, well, we kind of look like our avatar.
I did keep calling you Tony though.
Yeah,
which I got an awful lot of abuse from Tony for. He actually spent about 3 days sending me hate mail.
I'm not even going to deny it because it's true.
I don't know what his problem
He
is.
should have taken it as a compliment.
Yeah.
He should have taken it as a compliment.
I walked into it, but I walked into another room and a fella said, Tony, Martin, lovely to meet you. And I said, and he goes, what? And then your man spoke out at the meeting and he goes, what did you think? I said, it was awful. And he goes, what do you mean? Like, you had this thing with kids in a video and they're all going to tell their own stories. I said, yeah, that's rubbish.
I just kept getting hate gifs and hate memes.
Yeah. No, but I think people just think I'm the older guy because I sound more sensible, Martin.
Listen, shut up.
I'm sorry for laughing so loud at that, Tony.
Yeah, look at that hat on him.
It's cold out.
Yeah,
It's cold.
we have no hair.
He's awful, isn't he?
He is. But we're in his house, so we better be nice to him.
Yeah.
So besides, what are you doing yourself?
So what am I doing? So I'm very heavily involved in both the Social Democrats and working with trying to get Repeal the 8th over the line for, well, we haven't got the date yet, but we're hoping for the 25th of May. So doing an awful lot of work with that at the minute. Comedy is kind of a little bit on the back burner at the moment because I'm so busy with that. Because while I was doing that, I've also gotten involved with obviously South Kildare for Repeal. So I've got a couple of different things up in the air with that. We are going to be having a public meeting in Newbridge on the 26th of March. We're going to have Catherine Murphy, TD, and Paula Moran, Polly Molotov,
oh dear.
coming to talk. So Paula is one of the representatives of Midwives for Choice, and we're hoping to have hopefully somebody from Doctors for Choice and Lawyers for Choice coming too. So it's going to be a fairly full, informative evening. It's on the 26th of March in the Town Hall in Newbridge. So do please come along, and if anyone is interested in helping any of the local Repeal coalition groups, do by all means make contact with them and get involved. We need all the help we can
And
get.
I need to say as well at this stage that the lads who are sitting here and sitting around that think that this is going to just pass, that we need to get more involved and actually speak up as well, because you'll be surprised when you're talking in your groups that the amount of guys who seem to think, and there's a nasty undercurrent that's starting to slip in where, you know, I made this point to you, Martin, where libertarians. I know I get bothered by it, but you can't be a libertarian and then think that someone doesn't have bodily autonomy. So all you fake libertarians who are taking this Save the 8th and the fight back and all of this nonsense that's going on, join the resistance bollocksology again.
Yeah, well,
right?
I told you what, this is all Trump crap.
Yeah, but Martin, we have a problem here because these are the same people that when you turn around and you turn on TV3, they'll be on the panel shows. They'll be sitting there, and they're the male voices. They're the male voices, and if they're seen as the male voices, and there's no other male voices outside of Colin McGorman who's speaking up, like
we need an awful lot more advocates. We need as much help as we can get from everybody. So if you do actually believe that a woman should have choice over her own healthcare, and if you're in any doubt as to whether that should happen, I urge anyone to, if they're on Facebook or on Twitter, to have a look at In Her Shoes. Which is an absolutely brilliant account, and it's given people's just their version of their story anonymously as to what's happened with the 8th Amendment and how it's affected their lives. And it's not just women, it's men as well, because, you know, if, say, for example, I was your wife, Tony, God forbid, and say
I haven't got enough money for two.
But say, for example, I was getting cancer treatment, and they discovered that I was pregnant. My cancer treatment would stop, and I would have to travel to the UK, and at real risk to myself, particularly if it turns out that, you know, we've had a few stories this week of that actually happening and people passing away as a result of that. So you've got to think of the impact that it has, not just on the women, but it also has impact on families. It has impact on men. So we need all the help we can get. So if you can at all get involved in any groups that are pro-repeal or pro-choice, we need all of the help that we can get.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's very good.
Thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks for coming in.
It's been a heavy session.
Oh, no.
With no chocolate fingers.
The heavy session comes afterwards.
Guess there 1.5 points there.
See, I'm not a big drinker, you see.
No.
You're not big.
No, you don't want to feed me any alcohol. I'll be climbing over your neighbour's fences.
Listen, thanks for listening, folks. Special thank you to people who contributed for the 2 microphones that we're sitting here in front of. Do hit subscribe, leave us a review, tell your friends, share the news. Listen, guys, this is listener-led content. Let us know what you think. Give us the feedback. Keep an eye on the website, echochamberpod.com. Picking up a bit of traffic. Martin even putting up a couple of pieces now.
Yeah, going back into sort of writing stuff again and sticking it up.
Yeah, you can send us an email to the echochamberpod@gmail.com and follow us on Twitter at echochamberspod. Thank you so much for listening.